What's up, slashes and slashettes? My name is Nightfall, and welcome back to another anime analysis video. Today we will be discussing the all-seeing daddy of the thaumaturges, Captain Dart Dragunov. Let's start off with Season 1. Captain Dragunov is an inquisitor who captures Seth in the third episode. It's here that we first realize that Dragunov is actually a pretty decent guy. He tells Seth not to talk about certain things, as it would just add on to his list of crimes, which, yeah, arresting him for merely existing is definitely not okay. But the vibe that Dragunov gives us at first is more like someone who's just doing his job because he has to, rather than because he wants to. Which, as we learn much later, Dragunov is prone to disobey orders quite frequently. But I'll get into that later in the analysis. As for what we can gather about his views of sorcerers in this first meeting, he still does view them as evil and a threat, but he doesn't actually get involved until Mellie's personality switches and she almost kills some of his men. So we can assume that while he does think they are inherently evil, he at first only views them as potential threats, considering he barely got involved and very clearly allowed them to escape as he didn't really try to stop them. This season also shows how extreme the Inquisitors are when it comes to their hatred of sorcerers, but also how the majority of them are just, well, outright pricks. When compared to other Inquisitors, Dragunov is extremely laid back, cooks for his crew, jokes with them, and also works alongside them rather than just giving them orders and doing fuck all. The guy is an absolute daddy all around. We can also infer that the reason he dislikes sorcerers and works with the Inquisition, which this actually does get confirmed multiple times, is that despite his laid-back and casual demeanor, he takes his job of protecting the powerless extremely seriously, even going as far as to turn in a fellow Inquisitor for detaining non-sorcerers. We can further see this fact during the Rumbletown incident, as he could very easily capture or even kill Mellie. However, one, he sees that she's trying to help, and two, he views the Nemesis as a greater threat to the people, so to him, that makes the sorcerers a lower priority, especially, again, since they were trying to help. He also starts to question and gain an interest as to why Seth is so important to the Inquisition and, once again, lets him go so he can fight Hamlin and protect the people. And not only that, but he actually seems to be rooting for him and hoping he succeeds in his quest. Speaking of Rumbletown, he also makes it very clear to Conrad that he heavily disagrees with his choices and views, and even contacts the General of the Inquisition himself and reports how Conrad is treating the immigrants and townspeople. There was probably a little bit more I could discuss, but that was all the notes I took for Season 1, so let's move on to Season 2. Season 2 focuses heavily on Dragunov's character and his beliefs. It starts off with Dragunov being sent to the Arcadian Mountains as a punishment for acting without consulting the thaumaturges in Rumbletown. To his surprise, though, the punishment turns out to be a promotion to thaumaturge, and we also find out he feels responsible for everything in Rumbletown, due to him being too late to stop Conrad from killing an entire district of the city 15 years prior. Showing that he isn't a perfect man, even though he's pretty damn close, as he does have regrets, and is also willing to take responsibility for horrible events that really weren't even his fault. We are then given a little insight of his character from... Oh damn. I still don't know how to pronounce her name, but this chick, as she used to be one of his subordinates. After seeing Dragunov's interest towards Seth and his happiness of getting to hunt him, she tells us how he used to deviate from his orders a lot, and used his lower rank to fly under the radar, so to speak. Which ties back to what I said earlier, and shows us, just like with exposing Conrad, how much he's willing to risk in order to do the right thing and stand by his beliefs. We can also see this later on in his fight with Grimm, as he hesitates shooting him and tries to peacefully ask him to surrender, as even though he is a sorcerer, he still saved a lot of lives in Rumbletown. When meeting with the merchant barons, and when asked to enter into a deal with them, he pretty much tells Toussaint to quit with the bullshit and tell him what he really wants. When told they would use the Harmonisium to render the entire nation powerless so the barons could use them as slaves, Dragunov was very clearly unsupportive of the idea, but agrees to the deal, albeit most likely very reluctantly, as the Inquisition is trying to regain the authority it lost due to Rumbletown and Conrad. As the war is about to begin, Dragunov pays a little visit to Melly, and my god, he can pin me down any day. Anywho, he captures Melly, but first he asks her where Seth is and is seemingly worried. Now, whether that's about Seth or the incoming war and possible enslavement in Coslin Merlin, it's up in the air. Most likely the latter, or both. But either way, you can tell he's frantic, and he doesn't like the idea of the war ending with the enslavement of an entire nation, even if that nation is full of sorcerers. He then uses Melly as bait to lure Seth out, and he begins fighting him, leaving Melly with Lieselette. Eventually, he talks to Seth about Rumbletown and tells him how one misstep could have led to the deaths of all the people he was trying to protect, as Conrad was holding them hostage, showing that he's not really against Seth, but instead against his impulsive behavior. We also find out when Melly escapes from Lieselette that Dragunov gave her the key to her cuffs and allowed her to get away, showing once again that he realizes she's a good person and doesn't deserve to be detained. As he continues fighting Seth, he tells him to think about his current situation and not just punch through everything. Essentially, he's not saying to give in and not fight, he's just saying to think about whatever scenario he may be in, and think about if fighting is the best way to go about doing what is right, i.e., protecting the people and stuff like that. He tells Seth he'll help him stop the war as he doesn't like all the different motives and schemes that are masquerading behind it, and tells Seth that if he comes with him, he can get the Inquisition to stop the war and Coslin Merlin will be unable to be enslaved. Dragunov also tells Seth how he agrees with the existence of the Inquisition, that protecting people from the evil sorcerers makes the Inquisition necessary. However, despite that, he is very vocal of his disapproval of the war and even more so about the Merchant Baron's plan. He also seems to truly understand Seth as a person, knowing he tried to minimize as much damage as he might have caused when he was the Spectre Nemesis, and seems to acknowledge how understanding and good of a person Seth is when he says he'd be angry as well if he was in the villager's shoes. Which may have also caused Dragunov to look inward at the damage the Inquisition has done, though that's just what I got from the scene, it doesn't actually show that. Anywho, the flagship of Bohm comes down and shocks both Seth and Dragunov. Having been betrayed, and in turn meaning he had betrayed Seth, Dragunov helps Seth out by telling him to make it to the center of the battlefield to defeat Santori, protects him as he makes his way there, and even tells him Santori's biggest weakness. When Dragunov gets surrounded by soldiers, he proves how good of a leader he was, as his subordinates protect him, betraying the Inquisition and saying their loyalty is only for him. Later, when Seth and Mir go on a rampage and Seth is captured by Major Olmina, he helps Melly by taking her to Grimm in order to rescue Seth. Then, having done as much as he could, he tells them to survive, showing that even though they are on different sides, he does care about their lives. As Mir turns and starts attacking the Night Sorcerers, Dragunov hits him with cannon fire to draw his attention away from them and then refuses to flee, and instead provides backup for the sorcerers. Once Mir is calmed down, he sets course for Bohm, saying he can't overlook trying to enslave people. Dragunov is without a doubt one of the most complex characters in Radiant, and my absolute favorite character. His position of being a good person within the evil organization makes for interesting internal conflicts as he is constantly battling himself in his mind about what and who is right. He's a genuinely good person on the wrong side of war, and a character who will risk everything, even questioning his own organization, for the sake of doing what's right. And that's why I believe Captain Dart Dragunov is one of the greatest characters in Shonen. So I know it was a bit of a cop-out to do another Radiant video this week, but like I said in my last anime video, Radiant deserves more recognition, and Dragunov was way too interesting of a character that I couldn't help but do a video on him. I still highly recommend that you check Radiant out if you haven't already, because I really don't feel like I did Dragunov justice in this video. And with that being said, I hope you all enjoyed the video. If it's your birthday, happy birthday, and I'll hopefully see you all soon. Goodbye.